As has been said over these last several gatherings together, the question has been asked, what is it that lies beyond the state of Satchitananda? But in the interactions and communications of these last weeks, it seems that perhaps there's the necessity to rather ask the question, how do we maintain and sustain ourselves in a state of Satchitananda? That state where the level of cause and effect, the occult, and you might say the subjective or interrelated level of existence or mind merge. Living in a state of Satchitananda, how do we maintain and sustain ourselves in that state where all the three levels of life are in a state of unity, merged as one, so to speak? Now, in this forum, it's been said that all stories have 4 levels. That level where we can understand its teaching or its moral. That level where we understand its symbols, its sacred numbers, its archetypes. That level where we can look at it and recognize its unity, or that which binds it all together. And then there's that 4th level, that we can call that secret level, that covert essence that's contained in every story told. Now, from experience, it's been found that of necessity, that the Sufis have mastered the art of combining these 4 in their stories. And all of their stories are teaching stories. So, allowing ourselves to perhaps be a little technical, let's see what this simple Sufi story brings up for us if we look at it at these 4 levels. There were a group of travelers, wanderers and merchants on the road, and they all met in a caravanserai in the great city, on the borders of the great city of Bokhara. Now, after they'd had their evening repast, and they were all sitting around, some of them sipping tea and some of them smoking the hubble-bubble pipe, one of the travelers, dressed in the patchwork robes of the Dervish, spoke up and said, "Have you heard that story of the most beautiful princess who lived in the land of Fantastiland?" And one of the travelers spoke up, "Oh, Fantastiland, that's Fantasyland." "Well," said the Dervish, "would you like to hear the story?" And all of the travelers settled down, making themselves comfortable, to listen to the Dervish's tale. And he said, you know, in a time long ago, there was a king, and this king had looked long and hard for a beautiful maiden to be his queen. But there was never a maiden that came to his attention, that took his heart. But one day, when he was out riding, there in the forest, he saw a maiden whose beauty captured his heart and his soul instantly. She was dressed so simply, a common shift, but her bearing was noble, her face beautiful. Instantly he was besotted. And when he asked her, "Who should I ask for your hand in marriage?" she merely lowered her eyes and said nothing. But the king was not to be deterred, and taking her up on his horse, he rode back to the palace and declared to everyone that this is my bride, my queen to be. So they dressed her in silks and satins, and they were married. She was a gentle, kind, sweet being, and most who served her loved her. 9 months after their marriage, she gave birth to a son, and everyone rejoiced, including the king. But it so happened that the king had 3 sisters who were spoiled and pampered and not loved by those around them for the most part. And they were jealous of their new queen's beauty, her gentleness, and the care that was responded to by all who served her. When the king went off as he had to secure his borders, to hunt, the 3 sisters became even more vicious towards the young queen, until finally it became unbearable for her, and in her heart and mind she thought, "I'm doing a disservice to my beloved king if I allow all of this hatred and viciousness to swirl around in his palace. I will return to where I came, into the forest where I can live on berries and the fruits of the trees." So bundling up her son, she left the palace. But of course there were spies of the 3 sisters who followed her to see where it was that she was going. And the queen, following a familiar path, made her way back into that place where she knew that she could find the necessities for life: a stream, trees that bore fruit, bushes that bore berries, plants that had herbs. But she was tired, and just as she was about to sit down and rest, there before her eyes there was a magnificent palace appeared. And as it took form before her sight, trumpets began to sound, welcoming her. The gates of the palace opened, and servants ran out to greet her, followed by a noble and gracious queen and an old bearded king. Now those who were following the queen were greatly surprised, and the gentle queen who greeted the maiden queen said, "Come, our daughter, at last we have a reunion with you, and please bring in those who follow you." So those who were skulking behind her found themselves welcomed and given great feasting. To their great surprise, it was evident that this was a king and a queen, and their queen, who they denigrated and considered a waif and a stray, was none other than a glorious princess. They were fated for several days. In the meantime, the king returned to his palace to find where his wife, his beloved queen, was, and those who were left behind pointed him in the direction in which she had gone. Riding his horse into the forest, he soon came upon the palace, and with great fanfare was greeted and welcomed by the king and the queen. He too was feted and feasted, and told by the king and the queen that they were greatly relieved and happy that their daughter, the princess, had found a worthy husband. But after several days, the king and the queen said to the king, the young king, "Return to your palace with the courtiers who are here. Leave our beloved daughter with us for one more day. We will take good care of her and return her to you." So the king left with the motley band of courtiers, now with their tails between their legs, so to speak, returned to his palace. In the day that remained, the princess, now the queen, spent a blissful night with her son beside her, and in the morning the palace was gone. All of the accoutrements, the servants, the gardens, the fountains had disappeared. But then a gentle voice, the voice of her mother, the queen, said to the queen, "When we saw you in such great distress, being viciously attacked, we were given permission to return to this level of existence for 7 days. Our 7 days are now up, and you must return to your king." And so the princess, now queen, returned to her husband, the king, and of course, as stories go, lived happily ever after. A Sufi story that has all 4 levels. The first level, that level where we can perceive its lesson, its moral. What is it that you perceive as the lesson, the moral contained in this story. Remembering that all elements of every story are aspects of our own psyche. What is the moral that arises for you from this story? Ponder on this, and then taking it to its next level, recognizing that all elements are aspects of ourself, the king, the young king, the princess, then a queen, the king and the queen in the palace, the sun, the three sisters, the 7 days, all have occult significance. And on that third level, there is a unifying factor, something that binds this story together in our psyche, to bring understanding of it, and where those three merge, as they do in Satchitananda. And then it's secret. But if we can allow ourselves, because we have this ability, this wonderful mind that's been cleansed and sharpened and honed, to become an instrument that allows us to maintain this state of Satchitananda, we can perceive these 3 levels separately and as one. Our mind has this ability to function on these 3 levels and the level of Satchitananda simultaneously, which brings us back to our question, what happens when stillness and movement meet? But since we have this ability, we can allow ourselves to analyze those 3 levels, recognize where they come together, and when they do come together, we have the possibility of experiencing the secret contained in all stories. Our secret. An open secret, but only for those who have ears to hear and eyes to see. But for that, we have to see with our ears and hear with our eyes, as that Zen story tells us.